Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Rudy. This Lebanese singer is probably the greatest living legend of Arabic music. The song was written by her son, Zaid Rabbani, and with lyrics written by Joseph Harb. Let's dive into this. We're going to be looking at something from the artist Fairuz. I'm sure if I try to pronounce the title, it's just not going to be great. So it's there if you want to know what it is. Let's dive into this and see what they're bringing to the table today. There's nice texture layering there between the instruments and the vocals. Good use of dynamics on this track too. Sections with more and less layers, sections with higher and lower volume. We even have some tempo shifts going on here. Okay.
ولا بقدر احكي بندهلك خلف الطرقات وخلف الشبابيك بشتاقلك لا بقدر شوفك ولا بقدر احكي.
Really interesting melodic writing here.
خلف الطرقات وخلف الشبابيك جرب اني انسى تسرق
I like the staccato there. Very short ideas to break up more of this legato playing. really like this section. The slower tempo and slower movement on the melody really allows me to get a feel for the note choices themselves, particularly transition notes versus keynotes, and where they get placed in the melodic line. Yeah, dude, that was a fun track. I'm kind of curious. I mean, we'll get to this towards the end of the video, but I'm curious what the lyrics are exploring, what kind of themes we're going to see there. Because, you know, a lot of the times when I come to the harmonic narrative in my analysis, it's based around Western music theory. What specific chords, what chord modes, what chord progressions mean specific emotions. All the information I have of that specific type of writing is based in Western music. And I don't know, like this song, it feels very happy to me. It feels very joyous. There is almost a, because of the way it's all layered, but also because of the progression of everything and the very intricate writing in the melody, it feels very dexterous. It ends up, I end up mixing that joy and dexterity and bounciness into something positive, like a dance. I wouldn't necessarily say this is music to dance to, but I think from a Western perspective, that's what I hear out of it. But there are two moments when we kind of bring the tempo down a little bit, cut out some of the layers, and there is a harmonic shift in these moments where it begins to feel, it swings more towards a negative side. I don't want to necessarily call it melancholic, but there is a negative aspect, and it's minor, right? It's paired and balanced with something more positive like joy. But I don't know that I have a word for it. Wistful isn't the right word, but that sort of soft negativity, it feels like that. But it's certainly not as strong as melancholy. I don't know if I'd call it bittersweet either. But it is paired with something more positive. But I find a little bit of kind of bringing the emotion down a little bit in these moments. And it doesn't feel as joyful anymore. And of course, the tempo coming down and focusing on longer held out notes rather than the quickly paced stuff we hear in the rest of the track, it kind of loses some of that dancey dexterity too. So from a Western perspective, this feels kind of bright and dancey at times and moody of some sort at other times. But I don't know if that is the way that a Lebanese audience or people who are accustomed to Arabic music are going to interpret it, because I'm not sure if my ideas of these chords are accurate within that framework. Like I mentioned, I'm coming at this from a very Western viewpoint right here. So it'll be interesting to see what the lyrics explore and see if I can't maybe try to find a bridge there of using the lyrics to help me find out what the emotional weight of this is supposed to be. And for all I know, maybe I have a pretty good read off of it. Maybe there isn't much of a difference between, Western music theory and Arabic music theory. So it'll be interesting once we hit the lyrics to see what's going on there. Now, I really love the melody writing in this. Of course, it's rather dexterous. This is something that I found in a lot of music similar to this, particularly vocal lines, is little micro movements between notes. Even when you're holding a note out, there's always a little run down or a little, coming down up or up and then down. There's always some sort of movement to the melody aside from the key notes. And here, this is no different. But what I really loved too was when we slowed things down a little bit and I got to hear more of these transition notes versus the key notes. The key notes are the ones that are the strongest as far as the emotional weight. They're the ones that you typically want to emphasize in your melody writing, but they're also the ones that need the transition moments to further develop the emotions. The keynotes are going to be like, oh, this is sad, obviously, or this is happy, obviously, but your transition notes give the texture, they give the flavor, they give the nuance. Without them, you just have generic happy song or generic sad song. When you listen to the music that's incredibly emotionally evocative, and you're like, I don't know what this feeling is, but it's powerful. It's the transition notes. It's the ones you don't really pay too much attention to because they're adding the extra flavor. It's the spices that make it not bland. The meal isn't bland because of the spices, but the spices aren't really what you taste either. They're all mixed together to make this wonderful, delicious meal here. And that's exactly what transition notes are. You don't notice them, but they're so incredibly important. And when it comes to this music, the melodies tend to move rather quickly through these transition notes, and I don't always get a strong feel for it. And that's what I really like about the slower section here, is that we do spend more time on some of these notes and I get to hear them. But what I found was interesting too is that normally were the beats that I would expect the keynotes to land on, it wasn't always how it was written. Sometimes we would get a transition note on that beat, and instead that would move us into a slightly less emphasized keynote, which carries the weight because it is a very strong dominant pitch in this chord, but it carries a little less weight because the emphasized beat was given to something else. And I found that to be rather interesting and kind of common throughout this section. It makes me want to interrogate more melody writing of this style of music to see if that is something common within it, or if maybe it's something that just shows up on this song, or maybe something that Fairuz uses a lot in her music that helps her stand out from her contemporaries. Regardless, it is interesting and almost a bit eclectic from a Western viewpoint. But it works. Like I said, your keynotes already have emphasis by being defined as important pitches within the chord. They don't need the extra emphasis of being on main beats too. And it creates this interesting moment in the song. There's a few of them when I'm listening to it and the pitch just doesn't feel like what I expect, but it does work. And I think that these moments this is what is happening here, is that we're placing these transition pitches on these key beats. And that's very cool. And it works out really well for this track too. There's also, just on the concept of dynamics, already talking about the speed dropping in places, but there's also a lot of layering and volume shifts going on in this track. And I found these to really help the pacing because overall the emotion, atmosphere, energy, rhythmic cadence, a lot of this track is fairly singular. In fact, other than having the male group vocals coming in as a signifier, I think for a type of chorus maybe, I don't really hear much of a musical distinction throughout this track. I don't get a musical sense of maybe like a verse chorus structure or a hook refrain kind of thing. All of it sounds the same until we strip some of it back, remove some layers, strip the tempo back, kind of slow things down. That is a distinct moment of change. But I don't really get too much change in the rest of the track. And having these layers being added and removed, instruments coming in and then leaving, rising volume, falling volume, it gives the song shape and pacing and fluidity that musically, what's on the paper as far as notes and chords are concerned, there really isn't a lot of movement to that. So I really enjoy this dynamic way of having the song, or giving the song some sort of shape and fluidity to it, because otherwise I do think it would be just a little flat most of the time, and the dynamic qualities really help sections of this pop and stand out versus others when the composition itself doesn't really lend too much to that. And I quite enjoyed just the variety of timbres on here too. I mean, having the second group of vocals come in. At first I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, we got a little bit of timbre shifting here. But then we eventually bring the Fairuz's vocals on top of that, and we get some counterpoint going on. Well, a little bit of it the second time, but the third time through this section, we got a lot of that counterpoint through, I don't know if they were technically ad-libbed lines, but certainly less. Well, see, the thing is, I don't know the language, so I don't know if they were actually words or not, but there seemed to be less syllabic movement and more pitch movement, just kind of holding out a single syllable and then, you know, doing a vocal run on that. Maybe there was still something being said, just a bit slower, but to me, it sounds like, you know, Western pop music when they're ad-libbing on top of a chorus on the final time of a track. And I quite enjoyed the continued evolution of what I'm going to call the chorus, even if it isn't a chorus. It is the section we return back to with variation throughout this track. But there's also all sorts of stringed and percussive instrument that sit on the bottom of this track, and there's fluctuation in there too. Every once in a while I will hear some extra like sort of cymbals off to the side. Sounds like two cymbals kind of clattering together. I don't know what instrument it is. That's what it sounded like to me, but we didn't start the song with that, and I don't think we ended it with it either, but I did pick it up every now and then. And that's what I'm talking about. Instruments will just come and go, add in the little texture that they have, and then leave. And this is part of the rising and falling layering in the track. So it ends up being a bit more rich than if they had just stuck with a single set of instruments at the bottom of the song. Even though most of the instruments don't carry melodic ideas, except for there is a string instrument that tends to play alongside the vocals and plays the exact same melody with minor fluctuations to it. Sometimes they deviate a little bit in runs. Sometimes the string will hold out a note while their vocals do a little flourish, rising up and coming back down to the pitch. Other times the string instrument will do a little bit of more work than the vocal does. And it creates this nice little dance between the two, while for 90% of it, giving us this texture layering, having the vocals and the string instrument, having their sounds overlap each other and create this third sound to the song that's playing a singular melody. And I typically call this texture layering, and I think it's beautiful on this track. The two instruments being in the same octave of music, of range, sorry. They just sound great together. There's a softness to both of the instruments that blends really well. It works. And, you know, I got done listening to this track and I quite enjoyed it. And I think part of it too is going to be the shorter runtime. Some of the other tracks that I've listened to in a similar type of music, they go on for a while. And I understand fans of the music enjoy the length of it and that there are structural elements to it that I don't quite understand yet. Y'all have explained some of it to me, but I can't quite say that I fully get all of it yet. I certainly need more exposure to it. But I think what I enjoyed about this is that it still retains some of that consistency in the foundation of this track that I've noticed is rather consistent in music like this, while using dynamic elements to allow the song to feel fresh and new as we move through it. I believe, I might be misremembering this, I think somewhere, maybe in an email, Rudy had mentioned that this song would be more digestible for me, and 100% it is. I think this is one of the most digestible tracks I've been given with this type of music. But part of it too is that the more I listen to it and the more y'all explain to me and educate me on it, the more I'm beginning to understand how it works as well. Let me see if I can find some lyrics to this, and then we're going to wrap this video up. Well, there certainly is a bittersweet element to this. It is a love song. In fact, there's quite a few sections that either start with the phrase, I've loved you blank, or just the chorus, which states repeatedly, I loved you, I loved you, I loved you, I loved you. We return to this chorus 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 times. We definitely hear that line a lot. Now, this is hand translated, but I can't verify how accurate it is, how literal it is, how much it captures the original intent. So some of this may not be a perfect translation of intention, but it does seem to be rather accurate. Now, the verses, we actually hear a lot of the verse repeated within itself. There is a verse that says, I've loved you until I forgot to sleep. I'm afraid you'd forget me though, keeping me out of slumber and leaving me awake. This stanza is repeated 3 or 4 times on this track, and it creates a feeling of imbalance. That this person loves someone so completely and wholly that they forget to sleep. And they feel like the other person doesn't reciprocate that. But there's something in the middle of the track. It says, I miss you, yet I can't see or talk to you, and I shout behind the roads and windows. I try to forget, but you steal my amnesia. And when I think I found you and everything is back the way it was, you keep running away each time I find you. And this is curious. The idea of missing someone that you can't see or talk to. So they're not around you, and when you find them, they run away. Once again, doesn't feel reciprocal. That's pretty much the gist of this track. There is one more stanza that I think is important. It says, you're my prison and my freedom, the one that I hate and the one that I love, and I wish I never stayed up and hid you. And this bittersweetness just continues to permeate through this track. I wonder if there isn't a second layer to it, though. The idea of missing someone you can't see or hear, and when you think you have found them, they run away. I wonder if it isn't metaphorical for maybe someone who has passed. Maybe it's not a literal, like, unrequited love situation, but maybe you're chasing down the ghost of someone you've loved. When you think you found it, of course, it disappears. It's not real. But you can't move on with life. Their corpse drags you down. It is your prison. But as he stated, it's also the freedom that this person made your life better when they were around. Regardless, I think both capture a feeling of positive and negative relationships, or positive and negative feelings towards this relationship. And I do think that the music generally does a pretty good job of capturing that with the ebb and flow of the track. I do think it's interesting too. Now, we've checked out 5 or 6 maybe songs in this style. I know we've checked out a few tracks from Kathum. Is that how you pronounce that? It's been a while since we checked out that artist. I might be misremembering their name. But the ones that I have found lyrics for, frequently they are about love. I'm curious. I mean, it's 5 to 6 songs. That's such a small sample size. I can't really extrapolate that. I wonder if that's just purely coincidence, or if love songs just make up a lot of themes of what, pop music? Is that what we could classify this under? I don't know. Like I said, it's just a little pattern I've noticed. I'm not trying to make any grand observation out of it, but I did find it quite surprising. I was like, oh, another love song. That's right. And it's like an interesting little pattern there. Yeah, that's going to wrap it up though. I quite enjoyed this, but what did you think of it? These are just my thoughts on this track. Again, I'm not going to try to pronounce it, from Fairuz, What did you think? Did you enjoy it? Is there anything that stood out to you? Anything that you would like to add on to the conversation or maybe correct me on if I misspoke about something? Is there anything you'd like to educate me on, particularly since, again, I'm a bit out of my depth and education here. I'm all ears and I'm ready to learn. You can add any of that and anything else you'd like to into the comments section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. It just dawned on me, too, that this song has a lot of interlinking parts between all the instruments. They're all, like, rhythmically linked in, where one instrument might play, like, a note and then a break and then two notes and another instrument will fill in that break. And that's very reminiscent to what I talked about with the Oingo Boingo track from earlier today. So I don't know why that just clicked with me. It's kind of an interesting parallel between today's two tracks. Anyways, I don't have anything larger to add on to that. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC. As usual, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical with the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.